Hello, social studies students. Hey, today we're going to continue looking at free speech, and we're going to specifically look at freedom of speech as it's been practiced in Rockford, both in the past and in the present day. And I hope you'll find this presentation interesting. And as we go through this, I do want to make sure that you have your notebooks out and you will be wanting to take some notes. Be sure that you pause this video occasionally if you need to have it slow down to get all the notes that you need to get in, because I'm going to go kind of fast through this. So again, pause the video as you need to make sure you get notes. So let's get started. First, we're going to take a look at the past. This is West High School in Rockford. You might recognize this building. It's over on Rockton Avenue on the west side of town. Nowadays, we don't actually have a West High School in Rockford. This is now West Middle School. But back in the 1960s, when the events took place that we're going to be talking about, West High School, or what is today West Middle School, was actually the high school that covered most of the area on the west side of the river in Rockford, Illinois. So, let's see how Rockford made the news back then when West High School was around. In 1969, West High School held a cheerleading tryout. Only white girls were given a place on the squad. Now at this time you had both black girls and white girls trying out for the cheerleading squad, but only white girls were chosen. Many claimed that African American students were denied their position on the squad due to discrimination. It seemed likely to most that some African Americans should have certainly gotten on the cheerleading squad, but none did, and it looked like there was probably some discrimination that took place. A group of about 200 people held a demonstration on the sidewalk in front of the school with signs that were protesting school discrimination. 40 of those people who were protesting were arrested, and they were charged with illegally protesting and making too much noise close to a school. Think about that if there was a big protest right in front of our school and people were yelling and screaming. The police were called and arrests were made. Here's a picture of some protesters back in those days in the late 1960s. So, what happened? Well, Richard Grainid appealed his conviction. He was one of the 40 that got arrested, and he claimed he was simply exercising his freedom of speech rights. This case went all the way to the United States Supreme Court, and the name of that case is Grainid versus the City of Rockford. The court agreed with Grainid that his arrest for carrying protest signs violated his freedom of speech rights. However, the court agreed with Rockford that schools should be protected from noise that interrupts classroom learning. So his conviction on making too much noise was considered okay. So he won the conviction based on the fact that he has freedom of speech, but he was still convicted of making too much noise and interrupting the classroom by making that noise. This is an important case. So, based on this case, what are the limits to free speech? Well, first of all, although it's legal to libel or slander someone, and what does libel and slander mean? Libel is where you write something down about someone, publish it like in the newspaper or somewhere or on the internet. You publish a lie about someone with the intent to cause them harm. Slander is the same thing. Slander is where you speak verbally a lie about someone, again with the intent to cause harm. So libel is a written lie, slander is a spoken lie. And it's legal to libel or slander someone. However, if you do that, you can be sued for damaging their reputations, and they will win the case. So they won't be charged with a crime if they engage in libel or slander, but you can sue them in what's called a civil case for telling the lie about you and hurting your reputation. They won't go to jail, but they may have to pay you money if you sue them for damages. So that's one limit to free speech, is that you could lose a lawsuit if you use slander or libel against someone. Another limit to freedom of speech is the fact that you cannot use seditious speech. Sedition, S-E-D-I-T-I-O-N, or seditious speech is speech that is meant to advocate for the overthrow of the American government, for the overthrowing the legitimate government of the United States. You cannot use seditious speech for the immediate overthrow of the U.S. government. That is against the law, and you could be charged with sedition, which is a serious crime. Some of those who took place in the January 6, 2001 riots at the Capitol were charged and convicted for sedition, trying to overthrow the United States government. So that's a limit to free speech. You cannot engage in sedition. There's also something called fighting words. Okay, you can't provoke immediate violence with your speech. That is against the law as well. It's one thing to say that, so-and-so is a big fat jerk. That's using my free speech to insult someone. I can do that. That's legal. But it's another thing if I say so-and-so is a big fat jerk and I think we need to go beat the tar out of him. Let's go, folks. Let's beat him up. That would be fighting words, and that would be words that are intended basically to cause someone harm. That's against the law. Fighting words are against the law. You can't intimidate people so much that they fear for their safety. And you may be familiar with the Ku Klux Klan or KKK. One of the things that the KKK sometimes does is burn a cross. Now, it's allowed to burn a cross just on a public thoroughfare somewhere if they had proper, permission from the city. They're not going to cause wrecks or traffic jams. But if they would choose to burn a cross like this on someone's yard, that would be considered a threat, an intimidation where someone might fear for their safety. That would be against the law. So you can't intimidate someone so much that they begin to fear their safety. Obviously, if someone's burning a cross in your front yard, you would probably feel pretty intimidated and pretty unsafe. You cannot disturb school classes or commerce. You can't have a big loud demonstration in front of a school, such as what happened with the folks that were arrested at West High School. It was just fine for them to carry signs, but when they started yelling and screaming, at that point they were breaking the law. It was disturbing the school. You could not do that in front of a business either. If you start yelling and screaming and interrupting their ability to make money, to engage in commerce, that would also be against the law. So you can't disturb school classes or commerce with your speech. And one other one, free speech, and this is important to remember, free speech protects you from the government, but it does not protect you from other organizations. So you could say something like, I think our government is really crummy and I really hate them. You're exercising your free speech if you do that. You're fine. Nothing wrong with that. Not against the law. However, let's say that you work for a big company. Let's say you work for AT&T, and you go one day and you're out on the public street and you start yelling, I hate this company. I work for this company. I hate them, and they're terrible and all this stuff. At that point, you're exercising your free speech. The government can't do anything about what you're saying, but the company could. The AT&T in this case could fire you for talking bad about them as you're an employee. You're not allowed typically when you're an employee of any organization to publicly talk bad about that organization. That can get you fired very quickly. So if you did do that and you got fired, tough luck. There's nothing you can do. You can't just say, hey, I was practicing my free speech rights. That's not going to protect you. It protects you from the government, but it does not protect you from other organizations. Hey, take a look at some pictures I took a year or two ago right here in Rockford, Illinois. This was on the sidewalk in Rockford, in downtown, and someone wrote on the sidewalk in chalk, policing is incompatible with the peace. What do you think about that? Is that okay? Well, whoever did this is exercising their free speech rights. Now, a sidewalk is public property, and it's possible that someone could have stopped them. The police could have stopped them from doing this because they're riding this on property that is not personally theirs. It's public property. But more than likely, if the police saw someone doing this, they would not consider it worth the trouble. and they would go ahead and let them do this as an exercise of their free speech rights. So even though this is not that person's property, since it's public property, the police let them do it. However, if someone were to try to write this on my own personal property, let's say I'm a policeman and someone wrote this on the little sidewalk in front of my front door, that's my personal property. In that case, that would be against the law because they're defacing my property, not public property. Here's another one that I saw as well. This is right in front of the City Hall in Rockford, and I don't know if you can see it very easily, but it says racist work here. Again, the sidewalk is public property. The police probably could have stopped them from writing this since this is not their property, the people who are writing this on the sidewalk. But there comes a point when the police have to use some discretion, and in this case they'd say, you know what, it's not worth making a scene, it's not worth causing trouble. Let them exercise their free speech rights, and the city let them do that, the police let them do that. What's going on in this picture? You may remember when Colin Kaepernick of the San Francisco 49ers some years ago decided to take a knee and kneel during the playing of the national anthem at the start of a football game. And here you see he in the middle and a couple of others taking a knee and refusing to stand at attention during the national anthem. Is that a form of speech? They're not saying anything, but is it a form of speech? How about this picture? Is this protected freedom of speech? Here you have some people burning the United States flag. Is that okay? Is that exercising freedom of speech? How about this picture? Here you have some people who are members of the Ku Klux Klan. They're carrying the rebel flag. A very, very racist thing to do in this picture. Are they exercising their freedom of speech by doing this? Well, that does get us to the last subject of this presentation, and that is symbolic speech. So symbolic speech, by definition, it is communicating a message without the use of words. You want to get that down in your notes. Symbolic speech has the same legal protection as spoken speech. So when you were taking a knee, when those football players are taking a knee during the national anthem, or someone's burning the American flag, or they're marching with the Confederate flag wearing their KKK uniforms, that is all considered symbolic speech, and it is protected just like spoken speech is. But, important to remember, just because it is legal, it does not mean it is the morally correct thing to do. And you need to remember that quote that I have here on the fourth bullet point. Free speech is meant to protect unpopular speech. Popular speech, by definition, needs no protection. So yes, there are people who engage in very, very unpopular speech, people who engage in speech that I would consider immoral. But it's important to even protect that, okay? Unpopular speech needs the protection, and if someone's saying something that is morally, reprehensible, then you should be able to use your free speech rights to explain why what they're saying is so wrong and morally reprehensible. But it is true that we should always remember that sometimes the unpopular thing is the right thing to do as well. Great people through history have used their free speech rights to make a point which at the time was unpopular, but nowadays, as we look back, we realize that they were correct. Think Martin Luther King, for example. He used his free speech rights to criticize very, very bad racist laws that existed in much of the United States through 1940s, 50s, and 60s. What he was saying was very unpopular in many parts of the country, but now when we look back on it, we're all glad that he did say those things, but because he really did tug on the moral heartstrings of the people of the United States. And as a result of what he did, and as unpopular as it was, today we have a much more free and fair society than we had before. So with that, this presentation is over. Check Canvas and see if you have any assignment there.